Well, hi, everyone. Welcome back to Dig Deep. I am Kuvy. I'm the founder of Root, the Good Food Agency. If you are new to this channel, Dig Deep is a channel for the natural products industry where we discuss trends, tips, marketing things you could be doing, best marketing strategies to get ahead. We'll highlight some industry events. We talk with experts about things they've learned along the way. And speaking of trends, today I am joined by a good friend of mine, Liz Moskow. Liz Moskow is a food futurist. She's an industry vet who has a pedigree from the Culinary Institute of America and over 20 years of brand, culinary, hospitality, and CPG experience. I'm reading this, of course, from a script, but the truth of the matter is that she's a whiz. And Liz has really spent many, many years really studying what people are doing with food, where food is going, and what's coming up down the road. And one of the things she and I were just chatting, one of the things I found really fascinating was that she's not just looking at trends that are happening right now or happening next year. She's not just trend spotting anymore. She's really moved into trend predicting, and that's really where her passion and expertise lies. So, Liz, I'm so curious. I wanted to ask you more about this. Maybe we should rewind a tiny bit. Let's start with how you got interested in trends and kind of how you started to get your experience with looking at trends. And then I want to hear more about how that shifted from trend spotting to trend predicting.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me on this episode. I appreciate you calling, and it's very good to see you, Kuvy.
Too.
Good question. So how does one get involved in sort of the trend space? There's kind of two answers to that. One is I feel like I've been doing it my whole life. I grew up with a very strange father. You and I have in common some sort of woo-woo parentage in the past. And what I thought was woo-woo in the past really was a father who was way ahead of his time. And that kind of rubbed off on me quite a bit. And so I got entrenched in natural and wellness, and he was in polarity and acupuncture and entrenched in sort of that wellness world for a long time. And, my candy shops growing up as a kid were natural health food stores. And so I got interested in food and cooking, went to culinary school, and then took that into the restaurant space, learned a lot about food, cooking, providing for people. And then several years after that, we can skip over very long trajectory of me finding my passions in different industries. Started working at an agency as a culinary director, working with the CPG companies, all the top CPG companies in the US, some abroad, and also with restaurant companies. And so my job was mostly in the innovation space, helping them come up with new flavor pipelines, different kinds of product ideas, coming up with ideations of what's next. And then really being tasked with speaking to the press, people like you, to tout the innovations that were coming down the pike by creating a trends list every year. And so started doing this for the agency on behalf of them. And they had been doing it for years before I came on board as well. But I took a different trajectory with their trends and started really digging in from a different perspective, really focused on that natural and organic space. This was about, 9 years ago or 10 years ago or so. Because before that, most food trends are coming from high-end restaurants, fine dining, trickling down onto the shelf in the store. Think of your, chocolate lava cake is a great example, right? I think you can get that now on Betty Crocker, right? And it's not even a trend, but people still love it, right? Yeah. And that came from a fine dining restaurant. People paying $14 dessert at that time was expensive, right? At a restaurant. And then it came into CPG. But what had started happening is people started focusing on health and well-being. They were looking to the natural and organic space to see what specific ingredients were being touted. And I think you're a judge for the Nexi Awards. I think you get that front row seat for that as well when you walk the show and you're asked to judge and see what's coming down the pike. And we're still seeing a lot of that. A lot of the trends that are health focused come from that space. And so I started using that lens and understanding what was coming and then being able to extrapolate with my experience and understanding these ingredients from a kid, right? Like I ate carob when I was a kid. Not
We had carob stars.
me, right? Start a generation of children, right?
Yeah. We were so happy if our treat was getting to have halva or carob stars. Like that was it.
Same. Yeah. So both scarring, but also gives you this deep understanding of like you should never pass off one thing that's inferior as something that is the best thing in the world, right? Nobody should ever position carob as a chocolate replacer, right? In my opinion. Funny enough, when I was doing some work with Spoonshot a couple years ago, we did talk about carob as a trend. I think it was 2021, we identified carob as a trend. And then the following year, Data Central came out with carob as a trend. So we can talk about that another time. It's like, what is a trend? Where does it come from?
Back around. Yeah.
Does it come from people talking about it and then other people talking about it? Does it come from somebody tasting something? And it's really interesting where trends come from. So,
and probably, Liz, I mean, don't they sort of flip-flop back and forth, right? So CPG might inform something that you start seeing in restaurants, and restaurants might inform something that you start seeing on the grocery shelves.
Absolutely. And it's flip-flopping again, where I'm starting to see a lot more of the trends now, since I would say 2020 and COVID, and people really seeking that to comfort themselves more with food, are coming back from that delicious, indulgent space, right, in restaurants and then seeping back down. It's still happening in both directions. But gaining inspiration from both spaces is really an effective way to really land on what the trends actually are.
So I'm assuming then if one of the things that I've been reading about as a trend that's happening right now is that with the current economic climate, that people are once again going out to eat less and cooking at home more. And so if there are fewer people dining out, surely that is going to influence that restaurant influencing CPG, because if people aren't eating in restaurants as much and they're eating at home, then is home cooking going to start influencing what you see in CPG and vice versa, right? So if you take restaurants out of the equation to some degree, that's got to have an effect on the influence that would normally be happening to CPG.
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, the word influencer, people from home who were cooking in their home kitchen never had a platform before to share what they were making, right? So how would CPG know that something, for example, like pasta chip or a feta pasta or any of the viral TikTok recipes were intriguing and interesting to people enough to maybe make, and this doesn't exist, but a feta pasta kit, for example, right? Like Barilla could come up with
a new trend. Right? So right, might be calling it right now. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. But that one I think has sailed, but So there's trends now coming from restaurant, from natural and organic, from mainstream CPG, and now also from home influencers and home chefs who might not necessarily have a platform at a restaurant. Maybe they work in a food truck. Maybe they work in a commercial kitchen at a corporate kitchen somewhere and don't have a platform to share what they're making and sharing with their audience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, basically, all three are influencing each other to different degrees, right? The more that people can communicate with each other via the internet and all of that, the more there's influence coming from every direction. And I imagine there was a lot less creativity, let's just call it creativity, back before, like you say, back before we had the internet and such. You basically were getting influenced by maybe your local diner, and vice versa with the home cook, but you weren't getting influenced by someone in Asia or,
right. Unless you traveled there, right? And now that people are traveling a lot more, we're getting a lot more of that influence as well through more travel and personal experience.
So that's going to make your job a little harder, right? It's definitely more interesting, but also like huge.
In some regards, yes, it has widened the field quite a bit, but I think also, to me, it got me more interested in not what is trending, but why things are trending, right? And so I've always been somebody who asks a lot of questions and wants to understand at a core level, like, why is a fruit roll-up wrapped around ice cream something that goes viral that people want to try, right? There's a reason. It's not just because like that sounds weird, try it, right? There's a reason why these specific food trends from social media become viral, right? And so I get really interested in the why. And there's really only a limited amount of reasons and emotions of why people choose the foods they eat, right? So I get really interested on that level, of that emotional eating level. Like, what is somebody trying to get out of this eating experience? And is it appealing enough to most people? And do most people have that same feeling that this product is going to satisfy? And so in some regards, that enables me to kind of move from like what is already trending to start predicting what will trend by understanding, why does fruit roll-ups wrapped in ice cream appealing? What is it that customers are seeking when they gravitate to that? And what do I see with my knowledge of food, of cooking, of recipe development, of what's on the natural and organic shelf, what's happening in fine dining will be the next thing that satisfies that need? Because let's face it, I mean, we might see, like good humor come up when ice cream wrapped with fruit roll up, but I don't think that would be successful, right? Because it's a fad. So it's also that intersection of understanding the intersection of fad and trend. What is a short-lived fad, which is not something CPG ever really wants to activate on. And that's something that a restaurant could activate on, right? In a limited time offer and a one-off, that they're not investing money into a production pipeline in a factory to create this product that's only going to have a limited, no pun intended, shelf life. And so there's all these factors that go into it. So getting interested in the why is what I kind of geek out on, and helps me sort of extrapolate, look into a crystal ball and say, okay, well, that's going to result in people seeking things like this. And this makes more sense because these ingredients are either more sustainable, or less expensive, or more accessible to the average consumer.
Yeah. Okay. So even though your main focus is the future of food beyond just the trends that are going on right now, the trends that are going on right now are really helping inform for you to be able to extrapolate and see what might be, where this might be going. And what's attractive about this that might turn into something that is something that's the next thing down the road.
Absolutely. Basically, I'm assessing the trends, seeing which are fads and which are actual trends, and then figuring out where that trend's going to go and what else could it look like and what might it turn into in the next 3 to 5 years.
What are the other, what else are you using to help you determine, is this going to be a fad, or is this something that has something to it that I can see developing? Like, what are you've got to be just consuming a ton of media, talking to a ton of people, traveling, like all those things, right? How do you determine that? Okay, fad, but fad that has something that's long that I could see developing. Like, how do you do that? Tell me about your crystal ball.
I have sort of a methodology that I developed, with my consulting clients, where I'll put ideas that we come up with in workshops and things that might seem interesting to a focus group through these lenses, right? And in my mind, people consume the food we talked about, like they're emotionally driven, right? Their reasons are selecting what they select. They want to feel empowered about their health and their wellness. So they're selecting certain foods with adaptogens and certain ingredients, right? Or they're seeking comfort. They want to feel comfort and security. So they're seeking things that make them feel good, like mac and cheese or ice cream, right? There's reasons. And so in my mind, a fad is really easy to identify when you look at it and you say, there's only one of these reasons that this food is being of interest in the media, right? I would argue that example we spoke about with the fruit roll up and the ice cream is, it was sensational. You have this rainbow colored fruit roll up that seems gummy and interesting and sugary. And then everyone likes ice cream, and the juxtaposition of the cold and the chewy and what's going to happen. It's intriguing. It's interesting, but that's all it is. So to me, that's like a sensationalism. That's like a consumption. I want to try that once. I would imagine there aren't many people who are eating that on a regular basis, right?
Yeah, it has the sizzle online, but are you actually going to incorporate that into your everyday from now on? No.
Right. So if you take a dish like ramen, which has been in the forefront for many years already, but did emerge as a trend probably 9 years ago, right, in the US. if you look at all the lenses, it hits almost every single reason why people consume food, right? It's the old school chicken noodle comfort, right? It's got nostalgia to it in certain ways. People grew up with ramen. Somebody always had a packet in their house, right? It's globally embracing travel and understanding that ramen is core to the culture in Asia, right? It can be healthful, right? You can add all sorts of vegetables and ingredients and bone broths and things to make it really more wholesome and why people would pick that over, say, a greasy burger, right? There's and all the other lenses that I look through. If a trend that I'm analyzing hits more than 4 of the reasons, and I think right now I have about 12 distinct reasons, it's a trend. It's not going to go away anytime soon, right? It becomes ubiquitous and it turns into that chocolate lava cake that we talked about before, right? Now, ramen used to be a little square packet in the US and that's all it was. Then it became ramen restaurants and the jammy egg and all the things you could add to it. And now we're starting to see reimagined ramen back in CPG. That's not just the little 79-cent puck. It's a lot more like they have in Asia where everyone's getting the big bowls and they have more interesting inclusions. And it's again being packaged for convenience because it's become ubiquitous for customers. And that's a trend. And I kind of put that lens over every product. We can, in future episodes, kind of do that test. Like
I would love
trend or fad, right?
Yes. So are there actually 12? Do you actually have 12 that you use?
There are. I off the top of my head, I think I can probably get all of them. One is
You tell us.
One is really food is medicine, right? The things that we're putting in our body that are more healthful. One is food that is better for you, right? So it's the classic wheat over white bread swap. It's like feeling a little bit better, one step better than to make me feel better about my purchase, right? That's not food is medicine. That's just better choices, right? There's one lens that it's all about comfort, getting back to your roots, what comforts you, what nostalgia, things that you've had in your childhood that make you feel secure. There's one that's about bringing community together through food. How does this make me feel? Am I in a food tribe? Am I gluten-free? Am I paleo? But community could also be ways of sharing food together, right? It could be that way back when the polenta pour, right? That was a trend because people were able to kind of communally eat the table together off one charcuterie board could fit in there as well, right? What am I missing? Sensational. Again, we talked about like things that are glittery, things that are hot pink, things that just have that visual made for Instagram look to them is a category all in itself. Premium, VIP. So that's not necessarily caviar, but caviar is a trend now that would fit in that VIP, caviar and champagne, but also things that make people feel intelligent, right? Premium experience. For example, like a tasting of different scotches could fit in there, and they're learning while they're
Educational aspect,
right?
Yeah.
There are more. Right. I don't have them in front of me.
I'm also absolutely on everything you just said, and I'm also fascinated when they overlap, right?
Yes.
So, maybe it's like you say, it's a whiskey tasting or something where you're learning about whiskey, but it has the luxury, it has the intelligence, but it also has that community aspect where like maybe you're doing this in a group, right? And so it's giving you an opportunity to get together with other people. Yeah. So, and I'm sure you're right. I'm sure this is part of what you're saying, that the more of those, like you said, the more of those it hits, the more likely this is going to be turned into a trend. So there's basically there's these 12 aspects that are permanent, but then there may be a product that hits various ones of those aspects. And the more of those aspects it hits, the more likely it is to turn into a trend or be popular, right?
Right. And in my work with CPG companies, if we're doing workshops and doing innovation workshops and trying to figure out new products to develop, we'll put them through the lenses and pressure test them. okay, this sounds like a great idea and exciting, and everyone in a group gets all excited about it in the ideation phase. But is it really going to satisfy customers' needs at that gut level that's going to make it something that can take off?
Yeah. Well, since most of our viewers are CPG folks CPG companies, let's talk a little bit more about specifically, maybe we can jump ahead and talk about what you see to be some of the key future of food things coming down the road that may not be happening right this minute, but that you're seeing as something that people should be thinking about in the next couple of years.
Yeah. A big one, I think, for CPG right now is really that clean label movement, especially with the new administration coming down the pike and RFK conversations and really having an understanding that, our food system really could be killing us, right? Like I know I was just in Asia. I'm celiac. I do not do wheat. We had a layover coming back from Southeast Asia and Turkey. I was starving. There wasn't much that I was able to find. I did eat wheat. I was like, screw it. I'm starving. And I had bread and it was amazing. And I had no side effects. And I've heard from many people that bread in Europe doesn't give them side effects. So really understanding that our ultra processed, I think, is going to be the new villain, right? We had GMOs for a while, were the villain. Now it's the ultra processed. So that's really important, something for CPG companies to look for, because a lot of CPG foods that have to be made shelf stable are obviously not as clean label as they potentially could be. So working with food developers to reformulate products, we get pushback from CPG clients all the time, right? Like, you take the color out of Fruit Loops, sales go down, right? It's a fact, but it's re-educating consumers in the future, I think, are going to get smarter and realize that if it tastes the same and it's not a neon pink Fruit Loop, for example, like, customers will want that.
Yeah, Liz, I feel like I'm seeing, the New York Times podcast just did a whole thing on ultra processed foods. The New York Times is coming out every day this week with a different aspect that's leading people through recognizing what's ultra processed and on and on. So I know that's a big thing right now. Are you seeing the future of food as like, actually CPG companies are going to have to start responding to that, and they're going to have to start thinking of new ways to, okay, got it. So it's not just that that's a trend, it's that this is actually the direction, which is awesome news, right? Like, how exciting. And
it's expensive. It's going to be expensive. But I think we've already seen a huge shock in our price system. I think with the power of AI, it's going to increase exponentially over the next couple of years. Those recipes can be crunched and it can become a win-win for both CPG companies and consumers. They're going to be able to get costs down, figure out formulations faster, and pass on some of that savings to do all that good work to the food system.
Can I just say, this occurs to me over and over. This is something I see over and over, is that it's expensive for us to do something that our grandparents used to do. You know what I mean? It's like going back to our roots is expensive. Not processing the heck out of something is more expensive than serving up crap that's been over-processed. Like, that's just crazy. You know what I mean?
That's why, the Europe market model is still much preferred in Europe. And they look at our food system and they go, what are you putting in your body? Right. But the drive for convenience and this need for speed, and why people pay, 20% more on already expensive delivery food because they want it when they want it, and they're tired and they're exhausted and they're just happy to pay that premium to get food quickly. Convenience is a huge driver. And so they're just gonna do that. And so you can't expect an American household is already overtaxed to go to the market every single day and get what they need. And I think that's really what needs to start happening. But unless people can make ends meet and not be working 24/7 and not have to tend to their kids and make sure they're doing their homework because the teachers are stressed out and everything is broken, right?
Yep.
But we got to give up our need for convenience and speed and understand. I believe we are in the slow food movement for a long time. If I remember, we used to talk about
doing that. Yep.
And it was kind of like this figment, like this dream back then. Like, who cares about this, right? But really, it's what needs to happen. People need to just realize that what you're giving up is your total health and wellness, your ability to be happy, your stress level, what you're doing to your body on an everyday basis just to go faster and make more money.
Mm-hmm.
You need to spend more time with your family. You need to cook. You need to find ingredients that are more healthful. I understand that it is a struggle for many people in this country. And I can't say everyone should do this, because I know the reality is that some people can only afford mac and cheese in a box. But I think it's on the CPG companies who are making millions and millions and millions and billions of dollars to put something more healthful in those boxes for these people.
Yeah. I mean, where do I even start on all this, right? The fact that the tobacco companies are often the ones that are owning the companies that are serving up the ultra processed foods, right? So as they're getting their wings clipped on tobacco, they're buying up companies to serve up crap food to us instead. And yeah, as you started to touch on, we can't afford to buy this healthy food that sort of is more the way it was before, back in our grandparents' time. And yet we're just trading time for money, right? Like it might be faster now and it might seem cheaper, but then what we're doing is we're paying at the other end when we're going to hospital and we're with diabetes, having horrible deaths and long, slow deaths with horrible diseases and on and on. So, So, but anyway, on this cheerful note,
where this conversation will go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love that. That's such an interesting. I'm excited to hear that you're seeing that too, and that the one of the big future of CPG is heading in the less processed direction. That's really good news. I would absolutely love to have you maybe come on a regular basis, or certainly come on again a couple more times and talk a little bit more about this future of food. I think this is huge. It's really important. And what an awesome resource that we have you who, didn't you say that you just spoke at the National Restaurant Association last year on the future of food? So
I did. I was a featured session. That was really a great opportunity to speak about some of the new advances coming down the pike, both in technology, what's happening with food and tech, what's happening in nutrition and optimized nutrition and disease states and cures and things like that. It was really exciting. So it was.
I love it. I love it. Well, we will definitely have you back on. Thank you, Liz. Folks, for more on 2025 trends, check out our blog, Top 5 CPG Trends to Watch in 2025. Please tune back in for more with Liz as she talks about the future of food. Please follow us on social media, subscribe to our channel, and of course, like and forward to your friends. Appreciate you guys today. And Liz, appreciate you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was always a pleasure.